How will rising RAM, GPU, SSD, and eventually CPU prices affect gaming? That's a question every gamer is asking right now. But here's the thing nobody really talks about. It's not just gonna affect players, it affects developers, studios, servers, launchers, and yeah, even games like Counter-Strike, Valve, and the Steam market itself. And don't worry, this is not a "your setup is trash" video. Nobody's getting flamed for running a 2060 today. But if you think rising hardware prices only matter when you're building a new PC, yeah, this will affect you too, but more on that later. Why PC parts are suddenly pricier than a used Honda Civic. And no, it's not because gamers suddenly started buying too much RGB. The reason is 4 letters. AI, that's it. That's the villain. RAM manufacturers aren't fully stopping consumer RAM production. But let's be real, it's clearly not the priority anymore. Around 70% of production is shifting toward AI workloads, servers, data centers, all that fun stuff. Same story with GPUs. Same story with storage. Same story with basically every important PC part. At this rate, in a few months, a PC case is gonna cost as much as a Ferrari, and it won't even come with fans. And before console players start laughing, nah, you're not safe either. Your console is basically a PC with a different operating system and a controller. Xbox prices are already creeping up. PlayStation prices are next. The only reason consoles haven't jumped hard yet is because manufacturers already stockpiled RAM, and when that runs out, yeah, prices go up. Oh, and so do subscriptions, because companies never miss a chance to charge you more monthly. Now, let's talk about devs and studios. Yes, even the rich ones. Alright, consumer side explained. Now let's talk about developers, studios, and platforms like Steam, because here's something people forget. Game studios don't magically spawn PCs. They don't print GPUs in the basement. They buy hardware. A lot of it. Let's use Rockstar as an example. If Rockstar were making Red Dead Redemption 2 right now, they'd need hundreds of machines, different CPUs, GPUs, RAM configs, all just for testing and benchmarking. They need to know, will this explode on a 2060? Does this run on mid-range PCs? How many frames are we losing if we add this? And I know what you're thinking. Bro, Rockstar and Valve are worth millions. They don't care. They do. Yeah, they probably bought tons of hardware years ago. Yeah, they're not struggling, but imagine this. A few developers suddenly need 64 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM. Before the price spike, pocket change. Now, you could buy like 40 Nintendo games and still have money left over, and that's for Rockstar. Now imagine a studio like Ubisoft trying to do the same thing. Yeah, whole different story. And don't forget servers. These companies pay for servers, launchers, online infrastructure. Even if it's just an extra $10,000 a month, that's $120,000 a year. 2 years, $240,000. And that's the bare minimum. So how do companies recover that money? Pricing. Games get more expensive. Microtransactions go crazy. Now add new players into the equation. Most companies spend millions just to attract players. But now, console, $700, mid-range PC, $1,000, game itself. Yeah. Let's not even talk about that. Companies have to compensate. That means $80 games becoming normal. More aggressive microtransactions, battle passes everywhere. Not because they're evil, but because hardware costs force their hand. But there is an upside. The unexpected upside, optimization and creativity. Now here's the part nobody really talks about. And honestly, this might be the only good thing to come out of all this. Optimization and creativity. And yeah, I know, optimization doesn't sound exciting, but hear me out. For the past 10 years, game development has been on easy mode. Not because devs are lazy, but because hardware kept getting better and cheaper. If performance sucked, whatever. Just tell people to upgrade, slap DLSS on it, add frame gen, call it a day, and realism became the default goal. Better lighting, more polygons, ray tracing everywhere, animations that look like they were motion captured from a Hollywood movie. But here's the thing, realism is expensive, not just for players, but for studios too. Back then, most people didn't have GPUs that could run ray tracing like it was nothing. Studios didn't have unlimited budgets either, so instead of trying to look real, games had to feel new. Think about it. Minecraft didn't blow up because it looked realistic. Roblox didn't explode because of graphics. Early Fortnite looked like a cartoon and still took over the world. Those games felt different. They had identity, and you know what all of them had in common? Low budgets, at least at the start. Easy to run hardware requirements and zero obsession with realism. They weren't trying to outdo Rockstar. They weren't trying to look like real life. They were trying to be fun and unique. Now, fast forward to today. If you're a studio with 40 million to make one game, sure, you can chase realism. You can afford the best hardware, massive server infrastructure, and years of development. But what happens when PCS cost a kidney fewer people can upgrade, and even studios start feeling hardware costs? Suddenly, realism isn't the smartest move anymore, because if your game only runs well on high-end systems, you're locking out a massive part of your audience. And now, people can't just upgrade later. They're stuck with what they have, which forces a shift. Instead of asking, how real can this look? Studios have to ask, how can this run well and still be interesting? And that's where creativity comes back. You can already see it happening. Stylized graphics, cleaner art styles, games that lean into mechanics instead of visuals, even Counter-Strike 2. Yeah, the smoke physics are cool, but CS was never about realism. It was about clarity, responsiveness, and performance. That's why CS 1.6 and GO ran on basically anything, and now that performance actually matters again. Valve can't just ignore optimization forever. Well, they can, but they'll lose players if they do. The same goes for other studios. You either optimize or you innovate, and usually the best games come from doing both. If you already have a PC, you're fine. Right? Now you might be thinking, okay, cool story, but I already have a PC. Yeah, so do I. But don't get too comfortable, because even if you're not upgrading, this still affects you. Less new players can afford PCs. Less people can farm hardware-heavy setups. And that changes entire in-game economies. Which brings us to Counter-Strike, CS, bots, and the Steam market. CS is the most played game on Steam right now. But here's a fun fact. Not all of those players are real. If you join a random CS2 deathmatch server, chances are you'll see at least one player that looks off. Those are farming bots. Here's how it works. Simplified. Someone buys a small space, runs multiple mid-range PCs. Each PC runs multiple CS accounts using very legal software. The bots play, they level up, they collect weekly drops, and those drops, cases skins, items worth anywhere from cents to hundreds. Sometimes more. One PC running 4 bots. 10 PCs equals 40 bots. 40 weekly drops. Now imagine hardware prices doubling. Suddenly, scaling becomes expensive. Expanding farms is harder. Upgrading becomes risky, which means fewer bots, which means less supply. And when supply drops, skin prices fluctuate a lot. So, is this good or bad? Here's the honest answer. It affects everyone, but not equally. New players? Yeah, they're hit the hardest. People without PCs, way harder to enter. Existing players? You might actually benefit. Less bots, more incentive for optimization, more pressure on Valve to actually care. Potentially stronger market prices. Will Valve feel it internally? Yes. Will Steam change? Yes. Should you panic? No. But should you stop thinking hardware prices don't matter once you already own a PC? Definitely not, because this isn't just about parts. It's about how games are made, sold, optimized, and who even gets to play them in the first place.